welcome to Elephants in Our Rooms. And I'm your host, Janet Care Lessin, with Dr. Sasha, Alex Lessin, and Russell Scott Brenninger. And we're going to discuss what's going on in the country regarding the elections and COVID-19. And so we're just kind of free-flowing today. We don't really have a strong set plan. But let me start by introducing and everybody saying hello and doing a little sound check here. Russell Scott Brenninger, are you with us?
Present. Yeah, sure am.
Present. Oh, you sound good. Okay. And then Sasha, Alex Lessin, Dr. Sasha.
Here, accounted for, ma'am.
Okay, everybody's here. Okay, so I just wondered what you might want to discuss today. I know we've all been up early, and the last week we've been paying attention to this election and how close it is and watching YouTubes. And let's start with Russell. What's on your mind today, Russell?
I've been on the couch through Election Day and beyond, glued to the television, feeling like I was getting a rotten tooth extracted, while my Trump-supporting friends were just hoping that their guy would prevail. And the thing is, it went exactly like you would expect, because Trump demonized mail-in voting and told his supporters to show up on Election Day. So everybody expected a red wave or a red mirage, and that's what happened. He was shown ahead on election night. So I went to bed depressed that night. Then I woke up the next morning, and Biden had gained a lot of ground. And in the next couple of days, before it was announced that he had won, it was a nail biter.
Oh yeah.
But then,
we
the
were
mail-in
biting
vote,
our nails hanging on the cliff.
I mean, if you're gonna demonize mail voting, you can expect that a lot of the Democrats are going to be using mail-in because they believe in science and they think COVID is real instead of a hoax. So a lot of the Democrats use the mail-in votes. So everybody expected them to come in after Election Day, but I have to admit I didn't know if I should have faith in that or not, but it seemed to pan out.
Yeah, and then we finally woke up. What day was that? Saturday, I think we woke up and they declared that Biden had pulled ahead in Pennsylvania and I guess it was Nevada. And I think the Associated Press had called Arizona for Biden previously. I'm not sure what's their criteria for making that decision. And I haven't looked at the map lately. Did they give Georgia to Biden, or are they going to have to recount that?
To tell you the truth, as soon as it was announced that Biden won, I stopped paying attention to the rest of the numbers.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I was just like numb, I didn't have it in me to, have a whole bunch of online conversations about it or anything. I just kind of wanted to bask in the afterglow, and now with all the talk of him filing lawsuits and trying to, get the elections overturned. I've got one friend that said that RCP, which I didn't even know what RCP was, but it's like remote computer protocols.
What is RCP?
It's something like remote computer protocols. He says that they pulled back, I think it was Arizona and Wisconsin from Biden. And I don't know how much credibility or credence to give to a lot of the stuff that's being said, because there's just a lot of stuff being said. It's kind of washing over me, because there's just so much disinformation and so many accusations and things going down right now that I don't know what to pay attention to and what not. My take on it is that I've heard multiple legal experts say that Trump has what they call bupkis, nothing. But there's people on the Trump-supporting end of the equation that are just absolutely convinced that this thing's going to be overturned. Now, I made a prediction that Trump would lose and that there would be, an aftermath of some sort, from the Trump-supporting end of the equation. So far, that hasn't happened, and people are pointing that out to me, that there's not been any violence or protests or anything like that, saying that the Trump supporters just accepted it with class and went home. Some of them went fishing. But the thing is, there's 5 stages of grief, denial, grief, anger, acceptance, and they're in the denial phase right now because they still have hope that through all these legal suits and everything that some of these states are going to be overturned. So I don't think it's going to be until they actually realize that it's over and that Trump has to go, that there's a window of opportunity there if they're going to act out on it. I hope they don't. I mean, I hope that people are saying that, conservatives have more class than that. It's the left that always, goes down and protests and loots and burns down buildings and stuff, and we don't do that. I'm hoping that they're right because I don't want to see anybody be damaged or hurt. But I do think based on the personality profile that we've discussed before of the malignant narcissism and the lying, the gaslighting, the future faking, and all this kind of stuff that he does, that there's kind of a delusional window of people that's got some loose screws, acting out on the finality of Trump's loss. So I don't really think we're in the danger zone yet with that. But if it all passes over smooth and nothing comes of it, I'll be impressed. I'll have to reassess my perceptions of the threat level of guys with long guns showing up on Capitol buildings and stuff like that. maybe they're just like roosters, it's all a symbolic display of their manhood or something. They have no intention on pulling the trigger. I don't know.
Sasha, what's your perspective?
Well, on this, the most immediate thing that you're discussing, it seems to me that a critical thing happened when Espy, the Secretary of Defense, was fired because he complained that Trump was using federal troops and reserve troops that he could mobilize to quell peaceful protests. So he could read an upside-down Bible or take a picture of it. And Espy criticized that, and so he got fired. So you see that he's very concerned with lining up the fact that he has hidden his militias within government institutions like the FBI and the Homeland Security and ICE, and he does have armed forces at his command as president, and he's legally president until January. This guy, he's going to jail, and his cohorts are going to jail if he is out of office. He'll either flee to his place in Turkey or Russia, but he and his cohorts and family are going to jail. And I look at him as a mafia don who's going to do whatever it takes. Me and my people have been around enough to know that malignant governments like this are and dictators like Trump are capable of anything to not go to jail, for heaven's sakes. So that's something to look at. But then there's a larger perspective that I have that is a little bit different than almost everybody's, which is it's like I want to, what we've learned as anthropologists, professional anthropologists, is to empathize with other people, put ourselves in their place, and go really deep, not just into what they want, but the needs that are motivating those wants. And once we start talking about our needs to protect our vulnerability, our life, our health, and our environment, and we start talking about our needs, then we have a dialogue with almost anybody, and we can coordinate those needs using the computers at our disposal. And also, we have to look at from the perspective of anthropology. Most of us are ethnocentric. We somehow think that technological, advanced urban society is superior to agrarian or simpler or fishing societies, and that's not necessarily so from the perspective of anthropology. That's ethnocentrism. We think as we've got machines, we're better than other people. That's nonsense from my perspective. And so when I look at the Trumpers, I say to myself, these are people just like me. I can relate to them. Let's talk about our needs. Let's not diss half the people of the United States, even though I disagree terribly with what they're saying they want. But when we come down to what they need, they need to feel safe. They need to feel secure. They need to feel healthy. We all need the same things. I think we can get together if we meet on the level of needs. That's my perspective. Over. Oh, I just want to say that we came down to when the Duke of Marlborough was standing there on the bridges, and the charters were coming at him and saying, "We want to vote, we want to vote, we want to vote," and Marlborough was ready to mow him down, and the enough sane people said, "No, look, let's talk instead. Let them come through." The Queen and her husband said, "Let the Chartists come and talk to us. That's what we can do. We can talk to each other. We need a reconciliation. We need to make peace with our brothers and sisters." That's my opinion.
Well, I'm reading an article, Suffering is Singing Defeat, Trump fumes right as Democrats rev up to retake the Senate. So they've been preparing for months. Trump had been grooming his cultists from the moment when he would declare a massive fraud that had been perpetuated on the American people because it was the only way Democrats could win. They drank it all in. It became part of their DNA. Conservative commentator and anti-Trumper Charlie Sykes repeatedly warned that Trump supporters overwhelmingly believed that he would win the re-election. They were certain of it, and that they would be shocked if the race ultimately went the other way. So the weekend before the election, the Washington Post Philip went to Scranton to interview both Biden and Trump supporters and size up the campaign go-to operations. And parroting lies, 48-year-old Trump supporter Wendy Ross told Bob, "I think Trump is going to win unless there's an election fraud. God, I'm hoping not. I think that's on everybody's mind. Winning wasn't a problem so long as Democrats didn't steal the election. The only thing that we were worried about is election fraud." So they've been, I think Democrats are going to try to pull something just to get in. So they've been saying fraud long before we got to this point. And I've been fighting with my brother since this happened. And he just sounds like Fox News. He's just putting out everything they're saying. And they started with on election, I think it was election eve. Yeah, when they started counting the ballots in Pennsylvania, they launched one of their first lawsuits. They said, they're not letting us in to watch the counting. Well, the people that are counting are bipartisan. They're half Republican and half Democrat. So their people are already in there monitoring the counting and being a part of the counting. And the whole thing is about the social distancing with COVID-19. So they were protecting everybody that was coming in and out of the buildings, and they said, please stay 12 feet away. So they went and sued so they could come in to 6 feet away, which the judge, they agreed with the judge that, okay, but they have to wear a mask because the Trumpers don't wear masks, and they don't want to, give everybody COVID just because they're in there trying to count the ballots. Saying that was the first of many, so there's a whole litany of lawsuits coming, and each thing is just designed to, falsify and fabricate some kind of rhetoric that the Trumpists and all the Kool-Aid drinking followers will just get around and get pissed off, and more pissed off, and they keep repeating like a mantra that, the Democrats have stolen the election. So I hear I'm talking to my brother, and he says, well, the Democrats are the one that counted the ballots. I go, wait, Bill, they're both there. They don't let one party in Pennsylvania count the ballots. But these people he believes it. Yes, they do. You've got the wrong information. So anyway, I'm going to put it back to you, Russ. I know you've been having, and you don't have to name names, but I'm naming my brother. Because it's really irritating. I love my brother, and also my brother is no longer my brother. He's some kind of Fox parroting. I don't know. He's like he's been mind bored. He's been bored. He's been bored by Fox and Trumpism. So, Russ,
it's really strange. Well, the cap has come off on the delusional aspect of big business religion. Kenneth Copeland several months ago said that he was blowing COVID-19 away in the name of Jesus, and it spiked right after that. And then Pat Robertson got on there and say that God told him that Trump would win and bring on the apocalypse. And then everybody's seen that insane rant that Paula White did, the White House spiritual advisor, of bringing in angels from Africa to help Trump win. And, then he loses, so it's like, okay, well, either the deity that's talking to them isn't real or the deity they're talking to is lying, and it's like people don't come to any conclusions about that. I mean, back in the old days, if you were a prophet and you said something that didn't come to pass, you were stoned to death, and it's like now these guys that are raking in millions of dollars on the TV evangelism shows, they're still in business, even though they've said things that were goofy that did not come to pass. They said, God told me this, and then it doesn't happen. But yet somehow they still have a ministry. And Jim Baker, he's ex-felon. And, he went to prison for racketeering, and then he gets out, starts his ministry back up. He was saying that Christians are going to be, they're going to come after us, if Trump loses, and that voting for Trump is a sign of your salvation. I mean, that's the biggest aspect that bothers me about Trumpism is the religious aspect of it. I mean, they've got a guy who openly celebrates all 7 deadly sins as some kind of holy man in this cosmic war between good and evil. And there's a delusional aspect of it that really bothers me. Now, I've got some Trump-supporting friends that are pointing out that, in the last 4 years we haven't gone to war, and, he's like the only one that hasn't taken us into a new war. And my response would be, yeah, we may have dodged a bullet, by getting rid of him at this point in time, because all the psychologists in that book, the 37 psychologists that contributed to The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump, pointed out that his particular syndrome of malignant narcissism, with the lying, the gaslighting, and the future faking, is a very dangerous collection of personality disorders that if the right set of stressors were applied to him, it could really go ballistic and it really turn out bad for everybody. So he may just not have had enough time to take us into a new war or to push the button on a nuclear bomb. I mean, if everybody remembers when he was campaigning, he says, why do we have nuclear bombs if we're not using them? And then he threatened Kim Jong-un, fire and fury, and, we're going to bomb the SHIT out of them. And, the rhetoric that he's used is very dangerous and egotistical and dangerous for all of us. But just the fact that we've gone 4 years without any militaristic catastrophe isn't really so much an attribution to Trump. It's just that the right stressors didn't come along to trigger his particular personality disorder, to take us down the rabbit hole.
Yeah. Sasha.
Oh yeah. So if I may say a little bit about this religious aspect. Leon Festinger, in a book called When Prophecy Failed, talked about how Mrs. Creech's followers, who expected the world to end, to the Seventh-day Adventists from time to time, and it didn't end, but the ones that gave up a hell of a lot so that they could join this movement, sold all their earthly goods and so forth, they believed that the world had been saved because they were so good. So do the Adventists, and so it's like that. If you give up a little bit. So in the beginning, Republicans give up a little bit of their dignity by having a rapist who grabs pussies and lies all the time as their man. It makes them feel a little bit uncomfortable. They did go for him, and each time they go for him, a little bit more. And in the end, what happens is you get selective. Just like if you couldn't buy a Ford or a Volkswagen, but you wound up with a Volkswagen, then afterwards all you see is Volkswagen ads, and you ignore the Ford ads, and that's how it goes. It's called cognitive dissonance, and it takes a person who can reflect upon themselves to understand what's going on and deal with those things within them. So that's my little bit about when prophecy fails. The other thing that disturbs me about the other part of our discussion is that Congress passed a law that President Trump could nuke Iran without consulting Congress. He's authorized. So he's got aces in the hole, or he's got boom booms in the box that he'll leash him out if he needs to, and he don't care about whether he kills people or not. He is, is a malicious, dangerous narcissist who should absolutely be removed from any position of authority or place where his words can create stochastic murders. This is a criminal, insane person who's in charge of this country, and I call on the Joint Chiefs, hey, come on, this is your country, don't let him do it. Over and out.
Well, it seems rather insane. I can't find the YouTube or the article, but Mary Trump, the niece of Donald, says that he's not done. He's going to act out. He's going to start breaking things. He'll probably go in and smash all these antiques in the White House. It's like we've given a brat free reign to do whatever he wants. He's got the nukes. He's not leaving peacefully. So here's an article that said this. Let's see. With his days in office numbered, here's what Trump may try to do. This is Mary. Mary has a worse report on her uncle, but he's after nearly 4 years of relentless law bending and norm smashing, Trump now enters his final 2+ months. Now, I think we have to change that. Why are we allowing somebody 2+ months to stay in office? I guess up until now we had people that were civilized, and now we've got a brat. But the other thing that might make him contain himself somewhat is that we heard that he does want to run in 2024, and legally he can. But this article says he won't have to face the voters again, so he can indulge his basest instincts for payback and self-preservation. So we're ready to get ready for a constitutional stress test like we've never seen before. So there's three main areas where Trump could still wreak havoc with the law. So pardons. So it won't be anything new for Trump to issue a rash of pardons in his final weeks in office, right up to his very last day, and that's been common with prior presidents, like Clinton. Pardon his own half-brother Roger Clinton, et cetera, et cetera. So who might Trump pardon? So Michael Flynn, who still has a fight in federal court. He didn't want Trump to. I think Trump offered. He said no. He wants to win, but that might be the first one. And also thinking about Paul Manafort and George Papadopoulos. So. And then they talk about, he might pardon his own relatives. You may find that. Where is it? Trump might issue federal pardons to his family members just in case a future Justice Department determines federal charges are appropriate. Investigations that begin at the state level do at times end up being charged by federal prosecutors. So I think he can only do it on a federal level. And then they looked at the question of, can Trump try to pardon himself? And we don't know conclusively whether a presidential self-pardon is lawful, probably because nobody has ever tried it before. But the Constitution places no explicit limitation on pardon power, and legal scholars differ on the issue. Yeah, so he does. The author doesn't think he could do it, and they were going to look at intent, and it did not. The Constitution abhorred self-dealing. It did not intend to permit a presidential self-pardon. So if he does pardon himself, that could end up in the federal courts. Then, of course, we already saw the firing. I said he's going to be doing firings, and. So who did he fire today? Yeah, they said he's going to fire like Chris Gray. Yeah. So let's see who else they said. He might try to take down the inspectors general. Michael Atkinson, Justice Department IG Michael Horowitz. And, and he did threaten to fire Fauci, so we don't know. He might just go around firing people, especially the longer he gets pissed off, And then executive orders, I don't know where this started with executive orders, but it's like a king just declares and signs things. I think those future generations might want to look at executive orders. Oh, so let's see, he might, what might he do? He's going to look at the DACA, and the Supreme Court left the door open for the administration to issue a new order, executive order, and the Affordable Care Act. So anyway, if things don't go his way, he may use the executive order power to do what he wants to do. And, of course, he is still carrying the nukes. He has access to the nukes. So please, somebody, whoever's in there, dismantle the box. I think instead of taking it away, then make it suspicious. If anybody's listening, just go in and dismantle that box. So if he presses any buttons or whatever it is, it doesn't work. Okay, back to you, Russell.
Yeah, there's no telling what somebody with his particular cluster of personality disorders might do in the next months. Hopefully, more mature minds will prevail. If he were to give the order to nuke a country or something stupid, that they would tell him no. And the thing is, Trump, as somebody that was born with a silver shovel in his mouth, he's never been told no about anything, when it comes to wives or women or money or businesses or anything. I mean, he always gets his way. So it must be really strange for him to have been told no for the first time in his life, and for him to watch on television the whole world celebrating his demise. It'd be like being aware of your own funeral and watching people glad that you were gone. That's got to weigh on his mind in some fashion or another, you would think, if he's a human being. But that would not be a good feeling, to see massive celebration going all over the country knowing that you lost an election. But I think even at that point, even if I were Trump and I wanted to do what I normally do and just like sue the crap out of everybody to get my way, once I saw that everybody was that happy that I lost, I'd have a tendency to cave in. But I think his ego is so big that it won't allow him to do that. He'll rearrange the furniture in his mind to where somehow or another he won. He was cheated out of the election. It was just all fraudulent. I don't think he's ever going to be able to look himself in the mirror and say, the people said no to you, we don't want you. Mm-hmm. And he's never going to be able to get to that point, I don't think. If he does, I'll be impressed.
I don't think so. And then another thing he was threatening to do is have rallies, like to go rile up his people. But who pays for all these rallies? It's like we saw him zooming around, and this is his re-election. Who was paying for his plane every time he flew to something? Is that on our dime? How can that be? That needs to be looked at.
His campaign funds, or the money that he has for his office, is supposed to be paying for him. But from what I hear, he stiffs everybody. He's got bills all over the country that are unpaid, and now he's pulling a going away scam. Begging for money from his supporter base to pay for all the legal fees involved in turning over the election. So, and he gets to keep that money. So, he's pulling a scam as a grifter on the way out. That's what he does. It's just what he does. It's his MO. That's who he is, and that's what he does. He's in it for the bucks and the thrills and the giggles, and it's just the presidency is not supposed to be about a cult figure. Because I have no desire in the next 4 years to go in large gatherings with people with blue caps, baseball caps, and adulate Biden and go to and ride around in my pickup truck, with Biden flags and intimidate everybody that didn't vote for Biden. That's not even part of my psyche. And I don't think it's a part of the psyche of the people who lean left politically. We don't need the cult rallies. We're not drawn towards authoritarianism. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Biden can disappear into the woodwork. Just do your job. Maybe do a State of the Union address every 3 months or something like that. But Trump has just sucked the oxygen out of the room for 4 years. I mean, every single day. I'm retired now, so I'm home when my wife gets home, and it's like, okay, let's flip on TV and see what stupid thing he said or did today, And I don't like living like that. I feel like I've had a knot in my gut for 4 years that's finally been pulled out, and I'm just numb from it, It's like I'm not interacting very much with people online or anything. It's just like I just want to absorb what has happened. And all this talk about election turnover and everything, I don't think that's going to go anywhere. I mean, I have paid attention to a couple of legal experts that say Trump has got absolutely nothing as far as that goes. And the media has always called the elections. He didn't have a problem with the media calling his election in 2016, when he won. And if he was ahead right now, his support base wouldn't be saying anything about election fraud or recounts or nothing like that, because they'd just be, well, we won, that's it, And the rest of us that were left in the dust, we just get accused of having sour grapes, or we're butthurt, or, all the crap that we've heard in the last 4 years. And the one good thing out of this is that I've really experienced in the last 4 years what it's like to be demonized and ostracized and called all kinds of epithets, from snowflake, cupcake, beta cuck, you name it, I've been called that. And in New World Order, Kabbalist, a commie, everything you can think of, I've endured being called, and it's like I don't want to do that in return. I'm just glad Trump's gone, and I just want to let it ride.
Well, that's part of the whole thing. It's called hyperbole. Sasha, what's the word?
Hyperbole.
Anyway, hyperbole. Thank you for reminding me of that word. So it's part of this hyperbole, and it's Orwellian. So they take what they do is part of also active measures. They take terminology that's and they hijack terminology. So they turn words like socialism into like it's like you're a communist, right? And they mix it up and they hijack terminology. So we actually lose our language. We lose our language because it gets confused in the psyche. And another thing we need to look at is what is going on psychologically in the United States. So we have a president that is obviously, if he's talking about things like Barr was saying that he wanted to take poor Fauci's head off and put it in the square in Washington, D.C., like we used to do 1,000 years ago. And let's say you go, what kind of great mental illness are they? What is this? Are we barbarians? So what is going on? We really need to look at systemic racism, because this is not something that's isolated. We're looking at a whole society, or half of us, that are these racists. Basically, this is racism. This is sexism. MAGA means let's make America great again and take us and return us back to the 50s when blacks and women had basically no rights. And all these people are getting behind it. And somehow using these, active measures, they get Americans to vote against their own best wishes. And they're voting for things that are going to be deleterious to themselves. These people at the top are going to enact laws that only benefit the people at the top. We not only have racism and misogyny, sexism, and all that, and xenophobia, but we have a caste class system where the top really don't give a damn about the rest of us. They don't care if we're out in the street and starving and don't have income because there's COVID-19 and it's eliminated all these jobs. And, we're never going to get back to the level we had before. These pandemics may be with us the rest of our existence unless we really can figure this out, because there's another one that just hit all the minks over in Denmark, and then there's another one. So these viruses keep mutating and they're jumping around to other species, and then apparently if the virus gets out of control with the COVID, it'll infect the other, and then the vaccine they just announced today that might be released soon, it's going to become neutralized and validated and ineffective. So, we're in deep kimchi. But so now we have this other problem with the Senate. If we do not take back the Senate, then we got Moscow Mitch there for, another X amount, 4 years. What is it, 4 years for the Senate reelection? Or is it longer, 6? I don't know what it is. But and he's the stat on everything. 6 years. So Mitch McConnell has taken, there's been wonderful legislation passed by the House. It gets over to Mitch. He doesn't even look at it. It just sits there on his desk. So we're basically stalemated as a country. We're stalemated. We can't get anything passed. Everything is for the Republicans. And, we didn't get to appoint the last SCOTUS before. Well, now Trump has 2 SCOTUS high, SCOTUSes. So this country is really screwed up, and we really need to look at the whole system that we have. It's over 200 and some years. What is it? Over 230 or 40 years old plus. And it's like maybe we need to really take a look at systems to governance and what might be a more fair and equitable system, because this one at first only had white men with property that could vote. So there's a lot of problems with it, and I don't think we've really looked at it, and maybe we could limit terms. I think that we saw how much damage a president who found his way all around all the, the safety checks that we had, they didn't work. So he's basically stacked the deck, and he stacked the deck for, years in the, what do you call it, the legal part of legal branch, with all those judges in hundreds of different positions. So I'm going to stop talking now, but I'm very upset. I have trouble sleeping at night still because this isn't over. And I hope that by vocalizing this on our shows that we might be able to create awareness. And my dilemma is, how do I reach? I can't even reach my brother. How can I reach the world? So I'll pass the talking stick to Sasha.
Yeah, the function of the modern republicanism is to make sure that those who practice monopoly capitalism successfully and are hereditarily quite rich can extract more and more from the people. And the function of the Republican Party in government under a system like that is to have a public narrative which is beneficent while they steal your life force, your property, and whatever the wealth is in that particular society. And that's this basic distinction between a society that is being run, the governance is for the people's welfare and benefit versus one that pretends that it's doing that, but it's really stealing from them. And so I think you have to look at that's not to say that having small businesses isn't okay, but the nature of the way people are taxed way less on corporate income and investment when they pay 25% on huge fortunes that they've already made, and once the money's been made on investment and can be reinvested, and all they have is pro forma dividends, which is they don't pay hardly anything. There's a bunch of these devices that basically prevent them paying a share that could help the people in a more general way. That's a big part of the problem. And so that's what I would say. You've got to really look at limiting this artificial personages that we call corporations from avoiding responsibility for their terrible acts of taking safety away from people, making things dangerous, polluting our world, and doing all kinds of things like that. These things are functions of governance, and governments almost always tell lies. How can you be amazed at conspiracy when you think of how the United States stood down with this bullshit about the 911 Twin Towers being done by an Arab who lost his Koran outside for the CIA to find it, and all, it's so obvious. How can you believe this government that tells these terrible lies that gets all these people killed? This is not your friend. This is killing us, and it's got to be stopped, in my humble opinion. I quit. Next.
Next.
Well, there's also a fallacy called the availability cascade that comes into play in the perceptions of Trump world, because before the election they were saying because of the size of some of the rallies, of the attendees of some of the Trump rallies, it was obvious that he was going to win by a landslide. I mean, I have Trump-supporting friends that thought he was going to win by 100 million votes, just crush Biden. One of my friends said there's no way that 44.5 is going to be 46. And they just don't think anything of Joe Biden. And they thought that because the rallies were big, that would translate into winning the election. And, for example, in the Bay Area, out in California, right before the election, they had a rally that had 10,000 people. Well, California is solidly blue, and it easily won for Joe Biden. So the size of these rallies, number one, the attendees are people who are drawn towards that sort of activity. They have a tendency to be drawn towards authoritarian and look up to authoritarian leaders. They're the ones that are going to the rallies. And even if there's 10 or 20,000 of them, that's not an indication of where everybody in that state is at. And California was a good example of that, because there's a whole bunch of Trump rallies with thousands of people going to them. And, California with 55 electoral votes was solidly blue. And a lot of other states were solidly blue that had a lot of Trump rallies. But even around here, it got strange, because I live in Indiana, and it's like there's pickup trucks with guys with Trump flags, saying Trump, MFer, out their window and stuff. And it's like, that's not the world I want to live in, where the people that feel like they're in charge because their presidential candidate won try to intimidate everybody else and make them feel less than an American and less than a citizen. And like I said, I've experienced that demonization in the last 4 years, and I don't like it.
Yeah, and what is that about? Like, how did that happen? What is it? What happens to people that they are drawn to authoritarianism? What kind of people can't think for themselves, that they need to have their whole worldview laid out for them, and they can just believe it? And that applies with religion. And Dr. Lessin, we were talking about that this morning. What happens in just how they're raised? Are they raised by bullies? What happens to people just kind of are looking for someone to take that role and dominate their whole mindset, and all they have to do is read the rules and the laws and follow them blindly, and so they get sucked in by these cults?
Are you throwing that to me? Yeah. Okay. Well, there's several things.
Yes, I'm like, what's going on here?
One of the most usual causes of this sort of defensive reaction that becomes a dominant facade or subpersonality that they show to the world as who they are, comes from being traumatized for expressing their sensitivity. And they learn there's many ways that you can adapt to it, and one of the many ways is to just obey the authority, and then you don't get punished as much. Or there's other ways too, like going into fantasy world, developing an intellect and analyzing things. But whatever you choose as your dominant personality, if you hide your vulnerability ultimately from yourself, then your vulnerability gets touched off. You feel insulted or slighted. And you automatically kick in to follow the leader, the authoritarian, do what whoever's in charge. I heard one California lady said, well, I voted for Trump, but now Biden's the president, and I follow whoever's the president because I'm an American. Well, that's I don't follow anybody. I analyze the situation, and I have choices. People that lack a choice means that they're working from their facade, and they're not aware that for everything you feel, there's also the opposite. If I love AOC, that means I hate her too. And if I take those extremes away and say that there's pluses and minuses that I see in relating to my hero, who happens to be Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, I can see she's a real person, but that's what we've got. We've got the hope of some incredible people that have come into office now. Can't you see what's going to happen? This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. We're going to get rid of Trump one way or the other, and it's time to celebrate. It's so close. I can feel it, can't you?
Right. So I just wanted to say, because AOC was on and she said they're trying to, separate us more. They've been demonizing, what do you call it, the progressives. I don't think we're going to make any progress in this country or in this world unless we are progressive and we think outside of the box, because we're killing the whole planet. And we're turning the United States into Russia or China or both. I mean, we are just, if we keep going this way and we lose the faith in our elections, and then every time somebody, a Republican loses, they're just fake, can't trust our elections, then we won't be trusting our elections. And unless we can have elections, we don't have the United States of America. This is they're tearing apart our nation by this process of they're going to, take over whatever it takes. So I was looking. Oh, I should go back to you, Russ. Your turn. Russ, your turn.
Well, it reminds me of I don't know if it was Time magazine or what magazine it was years ago, where they projected what the average person on Earth would look like 500 years from now, and they were kind of a caramel-colored skin, slightly slanted eyes, because everybody had interbred, and there was no more delineated races. And the ridiculousness of dividing people by skin tone is just insane, because the number of genes that attribute for the skin tone are so minuscule, it's almost like a dot on an eye. And how we ever got into a situation where we're dividing people by the tone of our skin, it's the most insane thing that I could possibly imagine. I mean, I'm Caucasian, but I don't feel any threat, if the Latino or the black population is increasing to the point where I would be a minority, because I understand the science of what goes into skin tone, and it's nothing. It's not even something that we should even be considered about. Like on rental applications or job applications or even in health records. I mean, they should just expunge race because it's meaningless. It just doesn't mean anything. And I think we're with global travel and everybody taking mates, of different ethnicities all around the world, eventually we will be homogenized in a global population that will pretty much kind of all look like one another. But we're not there yet. We've still got these clans, and people identify. I have to laugh when I see a patch on somebody that's proud to be white. It's like, if you're going to be proud of something, why don't you say, I'm proud I have carpentry skills or something, It's like something you've done yourself. I mean, you were accidentally born in the United States and accidentally born Caucasian. It's like you had nothing to do with any of that. So why is there an element of pride in that? I just don't get it.
Right, and
it's racism. One of the most important things is
go ahead.
Is to if you regard, like we anthropologists do, every person and every culture as a source of wisdom for you, rather than an opponent. You learn things. Ralph Linton, one of the founders of modern anthropology, said when people of different language or ethnic groups are on each other's borders, They always, one way or another, make nieces and nephews, and then they have children who are in common. They have children that they love, grandchildren from the different groups, and it's inevitable, absolutely inevitable, that we're going to, like Russell says, we are going to enjoy each other ultimately when we can let down these stupid barriers and say, hey, everybody's got a light, and their path ain't like mine, but I can learn from them, and I can appreciate them, and I don't got to run everything, and it's time to listen to the native elders. It's time to listen to the people who don't have a chance. It's time for reparations. It's time for affirmative action. It's intolerable that people are afraid if you're black and you have to put your hands on top of the steering wheel, or some cop will shoot you because you're black. This is unacceptable. We're not going to tolerate it anymore. There's got to be justice.
Right, and we see the browning of America, and it'd be great to live long enough or go in a time machine and see what this planet's going to look like 50, 100 years from now, if we survive that long, in terms of skin color. My relatives are my descendants, so to speak. I never had children, but my brother and cousins and everybody have children, and the next 2 or 3 generations are brown. Everybody's got mixed grandchildren, hardly any have pure, and that I know. This is the former middle class, now the poor and struggling. But so I think that in some level, if we could survive these times, a lot of these things will disappear over time, and they're going to look back at this time. They'll be baffled, like, how did the world go through these times? So I think that Trump apparently is here in our continuum, in our existence, in our timeline, as a catalyst to teach us something. And it reminds me of the conversations I had with my poor father, who was first in and last out in World War II, who had to face Mussolini and Hitler. He was over there on the Italian front, and he lived it, and he came back severely traumatized, severe PTSD, and that generation was celebrating, and that's why we have the baby boomers. Now the baby boomers are getting up there and starting to exit this planet. And I'm so ashamed that Trump is a part of my generation. It's like, what in the world happened? But if you look at Mary Trump's book, and I have not read it completely because it's very hard to read about such extreme abuse, but apparently when he was born, his mother was sick and not able to take care of him, and his father was not around. So, I don't know who was changing his diapers. There was some severe extreme conditions upon which he and his younger brother were raised. And that's what went into the making of Donald or Trump. That's you, Lessin.
Well, there's also so many clips that you can watch if you want to know who Donald Trump really is from his earlier years, where he said, if I come home at 6 o'clock and dinner isn't on the table, I go through the roof. I mean, he's obviously kind of misogynistic and very much into delineated gender roles. And another really weird thing is a lot of males have fallen for the idea that Donald Trump represents the alpha male. And it's like he's probably the most weakest man baby that I've ever seen. It's like, how can you think that somebody that throws fits, like a spoiled child, is an alpha male? I've known, for example, Biden. I mean, he's a very mature person, and they're trying to take pictures of Biden showing affection to a young male family member at a funeral, saying that he's a pedophile, and it's like they're supporting somebody that's got 26 legal sexual abuse cases pending against him, but they're putting pictures of Biden touching people and trying to falsely portray him as a pedophile or some kind of pervert or something. It's like this is a sickness inside their own minds, and they're projecting it, onto an innocent person. And I think it's terrible what they're doing with that. And if you look at the demographics,
it's horrible what they do.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the demographics of the core of Trump support, it's white males age 50 to 64 without a college degree. Okay, and that doesn't mean that men with college degrees are better than men without college degrees. It's just a simple demographic. White males 50 to 64, non-college educated, support Trump and think he's wonderful. Okay, if you go white males over 64, 65 and above, they preferred Biden, and all demographics under the age of 50 prefer Biden. And there's been one of the things I've been looking for in the last 4 years is with every year that goes by, that's millions of young people that are now qualified to vote. And the young people really came through for Biden on this election, and I was hoping that would happen, and it did.
Right. So I have a couple of questions on that, and then I'll pass the stick over to Sasha. So you're saying there's some, if you could send me the link, that'd be great. The videos of Trump, who was he yelling at that didn't make his dinner? I can't even imagine him yelling at Melania for not cooking his dinner.
No, it was one of his first two wives, and he was younger in the interview. I'll try to find the interview and send you the link, but he says, I have to admit, I know it sounds sexist, but if I come home and dinner's not on the table at 6 o'clock, I go through the roof, And there's just all kinds of stuff that he has said in the past that pigeonhole him into this category of a misogynistic, malignant narcissist. And what malignant narcissists do is they lie habitually, and they gaslight people. I mean, Trump has gaslighted people and said, you didn't see me in the video you just watched, There's a lot of examples of that where he's caught on video saying or doing something, and then he'll say, no, you didn't see that. I didn't do that. And his followers just accept that and believe it. And then another thing that Dr. Romani on YouTube, she does a lot of tutorials on the characteristics of malignant narcissists, but she goes into this aspect of future faking, what she calls future faking. And, after the election, I'll have fantastic health care. After the election, I'll show you my taxes, and it never comes through. So they call that future faking. And Trump is terrible at future faking. He does it all the time. He gets by in life with future faking. So he's such a poster boy for the malignant narcissist. And his presidency has actually opened a wound in women that I know who have been involved in marriages with malignant narcissists that have had this, they've been abused personally by men who have these personality characteristics. And when you elect a president, it's almost like entering into a marriage. You feel like you're married to the person, and especially if they're real egotistical like Trump is. I mean, you see him on TV every day. He tweets constantly. I mean, there's days he does like 200 tweets. It's just like he's dominating everybody's attention. And I just don't think the office of the presidency was meant for that. I mean, to elect somebody to the highest office of the land, I would like for them to be better than I am in some ways, morally intact, intellectually competent, and their general knowledge is better than mine of the world, and they know how the world works more than I do. I mean, I want, if I have a plumbing leak, I want to hire an expert plumber. I don't want to hire a poet, and it's like, it's just, I have a criteria in my own mind of what I want for the presidency. And that's for somebody just not to even be seen that much, that works for the common good of all the people, instead of having everything be about them. In 2016, when he was elected, that was one of the little pits I had in my stomach. It's like, oh, God, I'm going to have to learn about this guy's psychology, which I've had. We've done shows on that, the book, The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump with the psychologists. Of course, in Trump world, all those psychologists are quacks. Of course. I mean, there's an anti-science and an anti-intellectualism in Trump world that wants their opinion as a non-educated person to be equal to that of the experts, and it just isn't.
Right. And the tweets, there's a way that in psychology, in my labs, they verbally abuse people, and then they put their programs into them. So the tweets are kind of like a form of this verbal abuse where it's in the media. It's 24/7. Everybody's focused on Trump, and he gets all the attention. And we've been battered with Trumpism, with words, with everything about Trump for 4 years. I feel like I'm recovering from PTSD, and like my poor father, and that's why everybody was celebrating so heavily. It's like, ding dong, the witch is dead. But now we're getting, is there a way for this guy to, do further damage? And of course, he's got over 2 months remaining in office, and he's got this militia he has trained that blindly follow him like he's Jesus. So we're not out of the woods. I want to start wrapping this up, so let's think of our final issues. But I do want to mention, before I pass the talking stick to Dr. Lessin, that we still have 2 runoff elections. So we have a possibility of winning these runoff elections in Georgia. Democrat John Ossoff will face off against Republican Senator David Perdue, and Democrat Raphael Warnock will face off against Kelly Loeffler. So somehow we need to, I'm going to donate, send some money. I don't think we can sit back and go, that's Georgia and that's their business, and let them deal with it. I am going to be active. I'm going to see if maybe I can volunteer to do calls. I really feel that I really need to be an activist right now, and that's why I thank you, Russ, for showing up today, because I felt we needed to at least start the dialogue. Maybe we can organize our future shows around more topics and have articles and videos to support what we're saying, but somehow educate the population and somehow deprogram them. My poor brother and all these people, I'm in the UFO field, and my friends I had for the last 25, 30 years, it's like they were definitely taken over by the Borg, and I don't recognize half of them anymore. So, Sasha, over to you.
Okay, yeah. What I want everyone to do is to go to a Republican that they know and become friends again, and to realize it's not just what you did or didn't do. It's what your ancestors did and the unconscious attitudes that you had. My ancestors killed all kinds of people in Canaan, and I'm responsible for that too. And I want to make peace with the Palestinians, and I acknowledge that my ancestors and their ancestors killed my ancestors, and we need to make peace, and we need to remember that we're all one family, and we see what we have in common. We have these wonderful children that are here to take over the world, and let's give them all a chance. We're all based on love, and let's remember it, please.
Okay,
Rush, final word?
Well, let's be thankful for the good things about the last 4 years. We didn't go into a major war. We came close. If you read Bob Woodward's book, Rage, you'll discover how close we came to going to war with North Korea in July through September 2017. So Trump isn't the saint that people think he is regarding war and dropping bombs on people. We're still dropping bombs all over the world that have USA on them, and I want that to stop. Bring the troops home. We don't need 1,000 military bases in 153 countries. It's the most elaborate socialist organization on the face of the planet. They have their own malls and commissaries, and it's all on the federal tax dollar. And I would like to see much less of a military presence around the world, and I think the countries that are occupied with our military will appreciate us for that. And I agree with Sasha, Dr. Lessin, in that we're all one world and one people, and we need to start acting like that, these accidental cultural boundaries that we've been born into should dissolve. It's not that you can't retain a memory of your cultural background and the good things that it brought to you, but we just need to all share openly with what we have to offer and just become more bonded with one another. Like Dr. Lessin said, don't be hard on your Republican friends. Try to figure out where they're coming from. They're normally very good people, very hardworking, good people with good morals. They just see things a little bit differently than the left does. And, let's just all get along better for the next 4 years.
I agree. So, I have a song I'm going to play here called Sign of the Peace by Jaia Earthchild. She's now living in Tasmania in Australia. And she wants us to call Sasha, so we have to contact her. But we are all one human family as souls inhabiting planet Earth. And on the soul level, we are one. And this is an illusion that we're separate, and we can't let people convince us that we're so separate that we have to demonize and hurt and harm and kill one another. So this is a hope for all of us to remember who we are on a spiritual level and celebrate the Planet of Peace. So thank you for joining us, and we will be back. Probably going to do another show on Thursday with Deborah DeFranco. She wasn't available today. So please email your comments and questions to us at aquarianradio@gmail.com. And that's it for today. Much love and blessings and aloha. Thank you for joining us.
Bye-bye.
Aloha.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Sharing one home. Our home is a planet of peace. Planet of peace. Planet of peace. In this vast universe, we all share this planet Earth. We have shared the air since the dawn of time. No one takes a breath saying this one's mine. We share the sun, we share the heat. It's time to learn to share the land in peace. You who govern, choose to spend more on war than we can comprehend. We insist to share our wealth, food and water, homes and health, teachers, trees and medicine. Then the time of true peace can begin. We are all one human family, sharing one home. Our home is a planet of peace. Planet of peace. Planet of peace. You of every nation, a family to me. I feel such consternation that you suffer while I walk free. I will do all that I can to help unite this family of woman, child, and man. The leaders of our nation, are they wise as well as strong, or boys in imitation, pointing daddy's gun, threatening the future, endangering us all? The people of all nations are united